All right, so let's dive into something that's been like bugging me.
Okay.
Can you actually browse the internet
Mm.
on a Roku device? We've got like a ton of YouTube videos, articles, even some like forum threads,
Wow.
all kind of focused on this like surprisingly tricky question.
Yeah, it is surprising, isn't it? You'd think
Yeah.
a device that connects to the internet would,
Yeah.
let you browse it.
Right.
But that's where Roku gets interesting.
Yeah, it's like they're saying, hey, you can have the internet, but only like our curated version of it. So we went straight to the source.
Sure.
Roku's official stance and their support pages are like crystal clear.
Mm.
Roku players and TVs,
Yep.
streaming video and music,
Mm-hmm.
general web browsing.
Yeah. And this curated experience, it's not just about like controlling content.
Yeah.
It's about security too.
Oh, that's a good point.
Think about it. Roku devices are in millions of homes, often used by folks who might not be
Right.
super tech savvy. A full-blown web browser could open up like a whole can of worms when it comes to malware and shady websites.
That makes sense. It's like they're trying to create a safe space for streaming, which, for a lot of people is probably all they need.
Right.
But then there's the other side of the coin.
Right.
Folks who want that flexibility, who want to go beyond the curated garden and explore the wilds of the web.
Absolutely.
And that's where the workarounds come in. Right?
Absolutely. We found tons of people discussing these workarounds.
Yeah.
And the most popular by far is casting.
Okay.
You're essentially using your smartphone, computer, or tablet as the browser and just mirroring it to the Roku.
Oh.
Some people even argue that it's easier to type on your phone anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of wrestling with the Roku remote.
Yeah, especially for those of us with clumsy thumbs.
Boy.
Plus, there's an app specifically for this.
Oh, really?
Web Video Cast.
Okay.
Keeps popping up in the sources as the app for smooth casting from smartphones. But still, it feels like a bit of a Band-Aid solution.
I see.
You're relying on a second device.
Yeah.
And it's not truly browsing on the Roku itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why some folks have gone further looking for hacks and loopholes.
Oh, wow.
One YouTuber we found actually showed how to use an Amazon Fire Stick 4K as a workaround.
Interesting.
You plug the Fire Stick into the Roku TV's HDMI port, and boom, you've got a web browser.
Clever, but not exactly elegant.
Yeah.
It's like buying a whole other device just to bypass Roku's restrictions.
It is, and it speaks to a bigger issue.
Oh.
How much control should these tech companies have?
Hmm.
Roku wants to keep you in their ecosystem.
Yeah.
But users are finding ways to break free.
Uh-huh.
Bit of a tug of war, wouldn't you say?
Totally. And it makes you wonder why Roku wouldn't just offer a basic browser.
Right.
Even a limited one. Is it really all about pushing streaming services, or is there more to it?
Well, one source pointed out that Roku's hardware might not be up to the task.
Oh, really? Web browsing can be pretty demanding, especially on like complex websites.
Okay.
And maybe earlier Roku devices just couldn't handle it.
But wouldn't a software update fix that? I mean, the Fire Stick can handle it, and it's not exactly a powerhouse device. Makes me think there's something else going on.
Yeah.
Maybe something related to, like, how Roku makes its money?
Yeah. That's where things get interesting. Because unlike some tech companies, Roku isn't primarily selling hardware. Their main revenue stream is actually advertising and taking a cut of those streaming subscriptions.
So the more you stream, the more money they make?
Exactly.
A web browser could potentially pull people away from those channels, right?
Precisely. Suddenly, instead of paying for Netflix,
Right.
you're watching YouTube on your Roku, and Roku isn't getting a piece of that action. Makes you wonder if this whole no browser policy is less about technical limitations and more about business strategy.
Okay, that's starting to make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
But what about those users who do want a browser?
Right. What about the folks who want more control over their devices? What happened to the smart and smart TV?
Well, there was an app called Web Browser X that offered browsing on Roku devices.
Oh.
But then it mysteriously vanished from the App Store.
Vanished? What happened there? Did it violate some Roku policy? Was it a security risk?
Yeah.
Or did Roku just decide they didn't want any unofficial browsers cluttering up their curated garden?
That's a real head scratcher.
Yeah.
But it makes you wonder what other apps might have suffered the same fate.
Right.
And it raises even bigger questions about how much control these companies should have over our devices.
I guess the real question is a more open platform worth sacrificing that curated experience? Is security more important than flexibility?
Right.
Or is there some middle ground where we can have both?
Those are the big questions, and we're going to unpack them even more in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good.
But before we go, I'm curious, what are your initial thoughts? Would you trade a bit of convenience for more control over your Roku experience?
You know, it's a tough one.
Yeah.
I think I need some time to think about it.
I think we all do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild to think that something as basic as web browsing can become this whole like debate about control and freedom, you know, in the tech world. I mean, we're not asking for much, just like the ability to open a web page on a device that's like literally connected to the internet.
Yeah, it highlights a shift in how we view these devices, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Smart TVs aren't just passive streams anymore.
Right.
They're becoming like central hubs in our homes, connecting us to entertainment information and even other devices.
It's almost like the definition of smart is like changing right before our eyes.
Yeah.
We used to think it meant like having a ton of features and apps.
Right.
But now it seems like it's also about like who gets to decide what those features are and how we use them.
One of the YouTube videos we watched compared it to the early days of the internet, before the rise of walled gardens like Facebook and Apple's App Store.
Oh, yeah.
Back then, there was a sense of openness, a feeling that the web was this vast, uncharted territory ripe for exploration.
And now, it feels like we're being herded into these carefully controlled spaces where the experience is like streamlined, but our choices are limited.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
These walled gardens can be incredibly user-friendly, especially for folks who aren't tech-savvy.
Right.
They offer convenience, security, and a sense of simplicity.
Yeah.
I can be appealing in a world that feels increasingly complex.
I get that not everyone wants to like tinker and hack their devices.
Right.
But for those of us who do, those of us who like crave that freedom to explore and customize, these limitations can be frustrating.
Absolutely.
It feels like a step backward, you know.
And it raises questions about the future of innovation. If these companies are so focused on like controlling the user experience, will it stifle creativity and limit the potential of these devices?
Are we going to end up with a world where every smart TV is just a slightly different flavor of the same walled garden, offering the same curated content, the same limited features, the same level of control?
It's a possibility, but it's not a foregone conclusion.
Okay.
The fact that these workarounds exist, that people are actively finding ways to break free from these limitations, suggests that there's a demand for something more.
It's like that old saying, where there's a will, there's a way.
Right.
And clearly there's a will to browse the web freely, even on a Roku device.
Yeah.
But the question is, will Roku listen? Will they adapt to these changing user expectations and offer a more open platform?
Or will they double down on their current strategy?
Right.
Betting that convenience and security will ultimately win out over freedom and flexibility.
Yeah.
It's a gamble, and only time will tell which approach will prevail.
And I think that's what makes this whole conversation so fascinating. It's not just about Roku and web browsers.
Right.
It's about a fundamental shift in the relationship between users and technology.
We're no longer just passive consumers of technology.
Right.
We're active participants, shaping its evolution through our choices, our demands, and even our hacks.
And as these devices become more integrated into our lives, as they gather more data about our habits and preferences, it's crucial that we stay informed and engaged in this conversation.
Absolutely.
We need to ask ourselves, who's really in control here? And what kind of digital future do we want to create?
It's easy to feel overwhelmed by these big questions.
Yeah.
But remember, each of us has a role to play.
Okay.
Every time we choose a device, download an app, or even just click on a link, we're sending a message about what we value and what we expect from our technology.
So let's be mindful of those choices.
Yeah.
Let's demand more from our devices, more freedom, more flexibility, more control. And who knows, maybe even Roku will take notice. We've spent this deep dive like exploring the ins and outs of Roku's approach to web browsing, or lack thereof. We've uncovered workarounds, debated the pros and cons of curated experiences, and even like touched on the philosophical implications of control versus freedom, you know, in the digital age.
Yeah, what strikes me is how this seemingly niche topic,
Right.
browsing the web on a Roku device, opens up a much larger conversation about the future of technology. Are we headed towards a world of like neatly manicured walled gardens? Or Will users demand more open and flexible platforms?
It's like we're at a crossroads.
Yeah.
And the choices we make today will shape the digital landscape for years to come. Do we prioritize convenience and security above all else, even if it means like sacrificing some control?
Yeah.
Or do we push back against these limitations and demand more freedom to explore, experiment, and customize our digital experiences?
One source we came across argued that this tension between control and freedom is inherent in any technological advancement.
Oh, interesting.
Throughout history, we've seen this play out time and time again.
Like the printing press, right? It democratized access to information.
Yeah.
But also led to concerns about censorship and the spread of misinformation.
Exactly. And now with the rise of the internet and smart devices, we're grappling with similar challenges on a global scale.
It's almost like a digital version of the Wild West.
Yeah.
With tech giants vying for control, users pushing for more freedom, and the rules of the game constantly changing.
And just like in the Wild West, there are pioneers and trailblazers forging their own paths. Those folks who are finding workarounds, developing hacks, and building alternative platforms are proving that there's an appetite for something different.
They're showing that users aren't just passive consumers.
Right.
We're active participants shaping the digital world through our choices and our actions.
And that's where the real power lies.
Okay.
It's not just about individual choices. It's about collective action. If enough people demand more open and flexible platforms, if enough people support those pioneers and trailblazers, then the tech giants will have to listen.
So what can we do? How can we make our voices heard and shape this digital future?
It starts with awareness.
Okay.
We need to understand the trade-offs involved, the implications of these closed ecosystems, the potential for both good and bad.
Right.
We need to educate ourselves and engage in these conversations, not just about Roku, but about the entire tech landscape.
We need to be critical consumers.
Yeah.
Questioning the assumptions behind these devices.
Right.
Demanding transparency from tech companies and supporting those who are pushing for more open and ethical practices.
And we need to remember that this isn't just about technology.
Yeah.
It's about our values, our freedoms, and the kind of world we want to live in.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
yeah,
we leave you with this challenge.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to question, to explore, to push the boundaries. Don't settle for a curated experience if it doesn't meet your needs.
Right.
Demand more from your technology and demand more from the companies that create it.
Because the future of the digital world is not predetermined. It's shaped by the choices we make today.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it sparked your curiosity, challenged your assumptions, and empowered you to be a more informed and engaged participant in the ever-evolving world of technology.